Yeah, I just want to make a comment about these.
We can't do any more
Propaganda by Liberal Labor.
Yeah, you can have
this. This is dishonesty. Look at this. This is the Liberal candidate for Willagee. Yeah, but this is his propaganda. He lives in Oakford. He doesn't live in the Willagee electorate. No one should vote for him. And this photo is 20 years old. We've got a photo of Colin Barnett on there. It's 20 years old. That's dishonesty. It is absolute dishonesty. Here's another. This is not a bad idea, MetroNet. However, it comes through Coogee, which doesn't affect the Willagee electorate in a physical sense, but comes through Coogee. How are they going to get this train line through Coogee? That's what I'd like to know. Because it's full of houses and they've got a lot of residential development going up there, so they want it to go through Coogee, which is the closest area to the Willagee electorate. But I don't see how they're going to get the train line through there. So, you know, it may be a great plan, but is it effective? Is it manageable? Is it practical? Is it applicable? Is it actually going to work? So there's an issue. Over the past 6 weeks, I have covered almost our entire electorate by foot, delivering what's called a handbill under section 187 of the Electoral Act 1907 in Western Australia. I like a little fly, but the correct technical term under section 187 is a handbill. This is the flyer I've been delivering. It's technically called a handbill. By foot to every letterbox in our electorate, and when people in their gardens or their driveways, I talk to them. I don't obtrusively go to the front door, ordinarily out of respect for the constituents of our electorate, and all the streets I mark off as I go on the map. And I've just got sections of Spearwood to do and a few other little sections. So for 7 weeks, right up till the election, that's what I've been doing, up to this Saturday. By foot, every street in our electorate as evidence of my commitment to the constituents and other citizens in our electorate. I spent 7 weeks leading up to the election walking every street of the Willagee electorate. I've got the map to prove it, which I've put up. I spoke to thousands of people in the electorate, and I didn't get enough first preference votes. So to win the seat, I have to have your #1 vote. You know, maybe you put me in the top 2 or the top 3, but at the end of the day, it's not good enough. I have to have the #1 vote. Also,
tell them why.
Why? I have to have the #1 vote because
the system.
Well, to win the seat, I have to have at least a certain percentage of the first preference vote. The other preferences, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, don't really mean anything.
They don't count unless you get the first preference vote, do they?
They don't count unless you get a certain percentage of first preference votes. And it has to be, you know, I have to get your #1 vote to win the seat. Otherwise, I will never win it, and it's just, if you keep voting for Liberal and Labor, you're just voting for more corruption, and that's what's happened in this election. Colin Barnett has won this election on a Supreme Court injunction for political signage across the state. That's the first thing. And a $19 billion state debt, which is expected to go to $25 billion. So he's created a state debt already in one term. How's he getting this money? What's the source of this money coming from? He's borrowing it from foreign banks, foreign investment, and also how they're going to pay it back. They're selling Crown land, which is land owned by the Commonwealth, which is land therefore under the Constitution owned by the citizens of Australia and Western Australia. And they now claim the politicians, I've got evidence of this in letters from politicians, Brendan Grills, that he has stated in a letter of the 10th of October 2012, Brendan Grills, Minister for Lands, reserve land is a government asset, and as such, government reviews it in the same way it does other assets. So the politicians see Crown land or reserve land as owned by them, owned by the politicians, but it's not owned by them, it's owned by the citizens of Australia and the citizens of Western Australia, the people. So they're engaged in corruption and treason because they are just going to sell our land of Australia to whoever they want to, private developers and mostly foreign private companies. And that's a form of treason because they think this land is their own, you know. They've taken ownership of it and it's not theirs to sell, so they're not supposed to be selling it. So how are they going to pay this back, this $19 billion debt, which is expected to go out to $25 billion? They're going to sell Australian Commonwealth land to foreign companies and private companies, and that's treason. And they are supposed to be creating an economy under the Constitution. They're supposed to be creating an economy which creates jobs for Australian citizens and which improves the well-being of Australian citizens. And they're not doing that. They're actually killing people. They're using psychiatry to kill people. So they're murdering their own citizens, including my brother David, and I have a whole list of names of people that the politicians are murdering. They use psychiatry. Politicians use psychiatrists to murder citizens all over the world. They've been doing it for a very long time, about 200 years from the research I've engaged, and they actually use psychiatry to destroy human life. So at the moment they're murdering my brother David Van Lieshout. They have a man by the name of Thomas Larson, an 82-year-old man who refused to take the drugs that these psychiatrists were forcing on him, and they got the police and threatened to taser him. An 82-year-old man was threatened. They threatened him with the police, and the police threatened to taser him. That's Thomas Lawson. Alex Christianopoulos, they are drugging him to death. They are murdering these people. These people will die on average 25 years younger than the general population. That's the federal government report, the National Mental Health Report of 2012, is evidence that victims of psychiatry die on average 25 years younger than the general population. Also, you've got the WA Stokes Review, which is evidence of human rights abuses, that psychiatrists subject their victims to human rights abuses. It's Nazism. They are engaged in a Nazi-style persecution of citizens.
Extermination. Extermination.
Persecution of citizens and extermination of citizens. They are killing people. And over the past 50 years, the last major commission into this area was in 1963 in Western Australia, and I've worked out just over 2 years of research. And I've written and published books on different issues. I'm an experienced teacher, I'm an experienced researcher and published writer, so I know what I'm doing. I've engaged about over 2 years of research on this, and they are killing people with their treatments. And over the past 50 years I've worked out that between 20,000 and 25,000 people in Western Australia have died as a direct result of psychiatric practice. So they're victims of psychiatry and their families are victims. The politicians are accountable. They are murdering people using psychiatry to do it. It's been going on for a very long time, and they use it all over the world. So they are accountable, as well as the psychiatrists are accountable. And they all deserve to be put in a big room, all the politicians and the psychiatrists deserve to be put in a big room, locked up, forcibly locked up against their will, forcibly given dangerous treatments, deprived of their liberty, all their human rights destroyed, and forcibly injected with chemical compounds, because that's exactly what they do to their victims. Have their lives controlled, have their money controlled, steal. Essentially it's murder, torture and slavery. They murder people, with their treatments, they torture people with their treatments and destroy all their rights, and it's slavery by the level of control that they have over human life, the level of control they have over their lives physically, and also their money as well, the level of control. And millions of people throughout the world have perished as a result of this practice. So they are murdering people, they are torturing them, and these people will die according to the research evidence and the government reports. And the research evidence I've seen is live documentary evidence of professional people throughout the world, particularly in the United States and Australia, giving professional testimony of deaths, including doctors, including lawyers, including journalists, including teachers and professors in universities, including government workers. Also the families, the victims and their families, the ones that have survived, giving testimonies. There are about 60 organisations throughout the world now speaking out to stop the practice of psychiatry, and the family members giving testimonies that their relatives have been murdered or killed in these places, and particularly the evidence given by parents that their children have been murdered as well. So they target vulnerable people, children, elderly people, people who are a bit vulnerable in society, who perhaps not coping well. Survival of the fittest, isn't it? It's survival of the fittest. If you can't survive in this world, you become a victim of politicians and psychiatrists who are killing off the vulnerable people. Look at the homeless people. They're just rounding up the homeless people and killing them in those facilities, getting them off the street. So it doesn't look like there's homeless people, but there are homeless people. They're just rounding them up. They're paying private organisations to house them on the condition that they get drugged by psychiatrists. So they are using psychiatrists to kill the vulnerable people in society. And the people I know personally that they are killing with their treatments and who will die within the next 5 years, according to the federal government report, these people will die on average 25 years younger than the general population. There's my brother, David. Thomas Lawson, the 82-year-old man who they threatened to taser because he refused to take their drug treatments. Alex Christianopoulos is a man in his early 40s, a businessman, who they are killing him with, injecting him with paliperidone. That's the same drug that they're injecting into my brother. And they give my brother another drug as well, a daily one, chemical compounds. Linda Shalala, who's been forcibly locked up against her will. She's continually being forcibly locked up and forcibly drugged, and she's also complained that she's been sexually assaulted. And they had her locked up in Midlands. They had her locked up in Fremantle psychiatric unit for 2 years. Then they transferred to Midland. She was living at St Jude's, and then someone made a false allegation about her, and police locked her up in Midland's psychiatric facility. I spoke to them. I said you needed to let her go because we had some media who was interested in talking with her. They wouldn't let her go. They said they were going to transfer her back to Fremantle, Elmer Street. So they're just keeping these people locked up and they're killing them with their treatments. Bridget Welsh was a lady that walked out of Greylands and stayed with me for 10 days, and I filmed her testimony. There's 2 parts in our YouTube channel about her. She freely spoke to the public about her experience. They are murdering her. They threatened me and then locked her up again. Police come and locked her up. The extent that they use the police is Nazism. You use the police to hunt people down and forcibly lock them up against their will and forcibly give them dangerous treatments. That's Nazism, and that's what it's got to. It is Nazism to be hunting people down, free people, innocent victims, hunting them down like animals and forcibly locking them up and forcibly giving them dangerous treatments which result in their death. And the leader, Patton, has been hunted down and persecuted by these criminals for 30 years and drugged. So that's just a few of the people. And there's been young people that have come to me. There's been young people who've come to me and said they've forcibly been locked up and drugged by psychiatry, and some of them have got off it. I help some of them get away from them. But they don't let you go, generally speaking. They get hold of people and they don't let them go, and they can't practice their profession without doing, it's not a profession anyway, they can't practice their criminal behaviour without locking people up and locking without enforcing the orders that they enforce, because nobody would freely pursue their service if that wasn't the case. So they wouldn't have a service. And the way that the politicians are enforcing this criminal behaviour is by the State Administrative Tribunal. The president of that, John Cheney, he should be jailed for what he's done to my family. He destroyed my brother David's life, and he's destroyed my family's rights for 12 months in SAT hearings. He's a first-class criminal and he should be jailed. Then there's John Hodges of the Public Advocate, who tried to enforce a VRO against me, which was cancelled on the 5th of February 2012 by Magistrate Morn in the Perth Magistrates Court. Used David's money, used tax money to do it, to enforce a VRO against a sibling, because I'm speaking out about this, because I'm trying to stop it. So how criminal is he? He should be jailed. That's John Hodges of the State Administrative Tribunal. So you've got the SAT, the State Administrative Tribunal, John Cheney. He should be jailed for what he's done to my family. And you've got John Hodges, a government worker for the Public Advocate, who spent David's money and tax money trying to destroy my rights by enforcing a VRO, not to mention defamation and act of victimisation under the Public Interest Disclosure Act of 2003, defamation under the Defamation Act of 2005, and I've got a case in the District Court against the government about that. 199 of 2012. So he should be jailed for what he's done. It's just so criminal. Fancy trying to do that against the main sibling that you have contact with. Not only are they killing him with dangerous treatments, they've stolen all his money and assets, over $64,000 in a Westpac account. I've got the statement that they closed. That's the public trust. Daniel Paulus of the public trust should be jailed for what he's done to my brother, forcing him to live on $70 a week. He gets $70 and $50 and $70 and $50, and they've taken control of all that money. And the public trust is defrauding the Commonwealth as well. All those managers should be jailed. They are getting pensions from the Commonwealth of Australia, and they are keeping the pensions, and they're forcing victims of psychiatry to live on $70 a week while their psychiatrists are murdering them with their treatments. So what they're doing is they're murdering them, they die on average 25 years younger than the general population, and then they've got all their money, so that they just keep that. And that public trust is investing money in the corporate sector. So they're enforcing slavery, this murder by starvation, and taking control of all their assets and money. So they should be jailed. They've been doing this for a long time. And the politicians are responsible, you know. Also, you've got the Mental Health Review Board. They should all be jailed as well for the Nazi orders they've given. Because remember, we're talking about the murder of about 20,000 to 25,000 victims of psychiatry over the past 50 years in Western Australia. That's just in Western Australia. So over the whole country, say the last 50 years, it would be in excess of 100,000 Australians they've murdered. And that's just 50 years. They've been practicing in Australia at least 100 years. And the evidence is the research evidence. Even the historians say in the United States that mortality rates are higher in earlier years. So the rate of death is higher in earlier years because the treatments are just more barbaric. But how many people they murdered in Greylands? You know, in Bentley they've murdered people. They murdered a 23-year-old girl who's the sister of a teacher friend of mine. They murdered a man recently by the name of Luke, who was 32. I don't know his last name, but the family has of a member of ours, family friend of the member of ours, a member of ours. So, you know, he was on the same drug they're giving Alex Christianopoulos and my brother David, paliperidone. They murdered him with paliperidone. So it is murder, it is torture, it is slavery. Also, the Mental Health Commission, who drafted more evidence, the new bill, the draft Mental Health Bill 2011, the original bill, and now they've got a new green draft Mental Health Bill 2012. The original bill, they wanted to sterilise children of of any age in that bill, and give dangerous treatments such as ECT and psychosurgery to children as young as 12. Now they've changed that to 14 in their new Green Draft Mental Health Bill 2012, because people in the public like me obviously are objecting. It is child abuse. It is proposal in writing for child abuse and crimes against children. They should be jailed for drafting that bill, because it's in black and white, there's no disputing. Anybody can look at it. I've got the original bill. I've also been told that the psychiatrists are destroying records, shredding records every 7 years now. So they're murdering their victims and then they're destroying the evidence. Well, that's the work of true criminals, isn't it? But ultimately it's the politicians who are accountable. They should be prosecuted for murder if they don't stop this. If they don't stop this practice, the public should demand that they be prosecuted for murder, because we are talking about 20,000 to 25,000 people in Western Australia being murdered as a result of this practice over the past 50 years. That's what the research evidence is showing. That is also based on figures given by Helen Morton to the Parliament 2006-2007, where she told the Parliament that 660 people had died in the mental health system. That's in just that 2-year period. 660 people. So if we go over 50 years, it's between 20,000 and 25,000 people, based on mortality rates higher in earlier years. Also, some lunatic in the public, either a government worker or some political person, or probably a psychiatrist who obviously doesn't like me talking about this, rang up the Fremantle Hospital on the Wednesday evening, the 6th of March, I found out, of 2013. Somebody in the public took the time to ring up the Fremantle Hospital Wednesday at 9 p.m. It went through to the triage section, apparently, of the mental health area, so they knew what they were doing. And they lied to the hospital, and I'm going to make a police report about this, and I want this telephone call investigated to find out who did it. That they rang up the hospital. They left a message that they lied to the hospital first of all, and they made a false allegation. They totally, deliberately, maliciously lied and made it to the hospital and made a false allegation. They said this, that they named me, and that I was threatening to kill people on YouTube, and that I had threatened to kill myself on YouTube, and that they didn't leave a name, and that obviously they lied. They deliberately, maliciously lied to the hospital because they said that they were concerned about my welfare and all this sort of thing, but they didn't leave their name. So first of all, the hospital should have been a bit suspicious about that. And so obviously that's false. I would never do something like that. I have never done anything like that, and I would never do anything like that. I always promote life. I always help the poor people, the victims of crime and government crime, and homeless people, and people who are suffering and struggling in our society. So anybody who knows me and who's been studying the kind of work that I'm doing obviously knows that I'm nothing like that. So anyway, on the 8th of March, and that was 3 days before the state election, in which I was contesting the seat of Willagee. So they rang up 3 days before the election.
Sounds desperate.
So what I think they were intending to do, they were trying to get me locked up, weren't they?
They were scared because they knew what you were saying is true, I think.
Well, what I'm saying is true because it's based on research evidence.
Everything you
and
do.
It's based on government reports.
Yeah. But their work is in jeopardy, basically.
Well, that's right. They can't keep murdering people
They could just
forever,
get another career. They could just get another career.
What, like a cleaner?
Like everyone else has to do.
Like a cleaner in a jail or something like that?
If people do what they have to do to get a life, and they study or they do something and get a career, if they realise they made the wrong decision, they just go back and do more work and get another career.
Well, they should be jailed for
But they
murder.
refuse to, even though what they're doing is dangerous. They don't
can't
give a shit.
murder
They think
other
they
people's
have-
family members, the politicians, the psychiatrists.
They think they have the right to say everyone else is wrong and they're right, even though the evidence clearly proves the opposite.
Well, that's right. So they should be prosecuted and jailed for their crimes against a civilian society. We're talking about thousands of people here, not talking about a few people.
Yeah, well, there's obviously money at stake, but surely wouldn't Australia be better served by people who want to contribute and build the country instead of cancering a bit out of it and putting something in there for themselves?
That's right, but it's more than that. The tax money, Australians are working very hard in paying tax, and their tax money is being used to murder people. They murder their own citizens, murder their family members.
They're sore and
So it's very evil.
They're groaning under the burden of it, yet they're just being treated like
Slaves. Cattle?
chattel, or what would you call it? What was that thing like? Cannon fodder.
Cannon fodder.
Just about as invaluable as that. Precious.
Yeah, well, the politicians will take your blood and they'll take your money, and that's all they care about. So anyway, that's 3 days before the election, and the day before the election, on the 8th of March, at 2:15 p.m, I had a visit from 2 nurses from the hospital, from Elm Street, Fremantle, which just about had a heart attack when they showed up. I was at the front painting signs for the election and doing up some, signs and things. And I was at the front yard doing this, and they came into the front yard, and it was just really weird because I didn't know these people were. Jane Murdoch, senior registered nurse, and Nicola Ontwistle, registered nurse from Elm Street, Fremantle, told me that somebody had rang up, and I took their names, I took the details, and I found out later when I made some further inquiries that it was made Wednesday 9 o'clock, 6th of March. So somebody had really deliberately done this, taken the time, methodically worked out what they were going to do and what they were going to say, and made this, lied to the hospital and made this very serious false allegation about me, which I'm going to write a police report and I want to investigate it.
It sort of tampers with the election, doesn't it?
Well, it was 3 days before the election, and also it's really criminal behaviour. It's just further evidence of their criminality to try and stop people, even simply talking about the evidence and the issues and the facts publicly. So making serious threats like that against people. Obviously they tried to get me locked up or something, but you idiot, didn't work, did it? So I want this investigated. I'm making a police report. I want to find out who that caller was. They didn't leave their name. There was no name left. That's what I was told by these nurses. And when I rang up the hospital later to make further inquiries, I was told that there was no name left. So the person is just a first-class criminal, really, doing this. And I was really shocked, that these people would be so evil and malicious and deceptive and full of lies and full of hatred and evil that they would go to the point of taking the time and effort to ring up like that, make a false allegation, a serious false allegation, to try and get me. Obviously they would try and get me locked up. But that's what they do. They use it as a political weapon that provides further evidence that it is a political weapon that these psychiatrists are engaged. It is political sociological.
But
There's no question about it.
The public service could just be closing ranks and signing an alibi with each other that no one's going to give the name up. So it was an anonymous call. I don't understand how they can act on an anonymous call if it's got legal consequences. I don't think that it's legal. They might have broken the law by actually going out there without actually having someone's name to be accountable for the deception in the first place.
Well, that's right. It is highly illegal. It's
probably
highly immoral.
not legally.
Well, the law that I follow is the law of the Bible. A lot of laws that are made by politicians are useless, and they only destroy citizens' rights, and they're not good for society.
Well, I don't know.
So
you interpret the Bible in an honest way.
yeah,
Well, the law can probably be interpreted in an honest way as well.
Well, certainly it's dishonest and malicious and,
These many
if
things.
not illegal, definitely highly immoral to be making a serious false allegation about me, knowing that I'm speaking publicly about these issues, knowing full well that I have a political objection to this practice, that I have called for a Royal Commission, that I am trying to stop this practice, that I want it abolished. They know all that. So knowing all that, then they've taken the deliberate malicious step to continue to enforce their...
Yeah, you can see what
It's
happened.
a weapon. It's a political weapon that they use. They use it all over the world. The politicians use psychiatry to destroy human life and to destroy the lives of their own citizens. And obviously whoever's done this is fully aware of the power that they've been given. You know, it's Nazism. The extent to that they use the police to get people, go into people's homes, drag them out of their own homes, give them dangerous treatments, get the police to drag them to a psychiatric facility, knock them out with dangerous drugs and then ship them to Greylands or wherever they can't get out. It's so serious. It is no question that this is a form of Nazism. And the fact that the police are helping them so willingly is just such a serious concern. And also to use, for them, the psychiatrists or the people supporting them, because it's all the people supporting their work as well, getting the police to threaten to taser an 82-year-old man just simply because he refused to take their drugs. No, I don't want to take your drugs. I don't want to receive your drugs. I don't want to receive your dangerous treatments, would have been his response. I do not want to receive your dangerous treatments, or I don't want your drugs or your so-called medication. Obviously it's not medication if it's killing people. And then to go from that point, the right to refuse.
Exercising democratic rights to refuse.
Well, a right to say no, like if somebody's raping you, you've got a right to say no. These people they are worse than rapists. They are. It's like putting, you know, it's like putting the rapist in charge of a child. That's what these people are like. You know, for an 82-year-old man to say, no, I don't want this, to say no to them, and that goes from that to them getting the police and threatening to taser him. It's obviously Nazism, isn't it? How obvious is it? There are enormous similarities, which I've already outlined on our YouTube channel in the description details, and I'll put them in again. There's about 30 points that I've made where how this practice is characteristic of Nazi-style government. And the politicians are accountable. They've been letting it go on for so long that there are thousands of people dead. And it's simply criminal. And if they don't stop it, they will be responsible for the murder of these people, including my brother David. And I will name every single one of you who is in the parliament who is responsible for murdering people if it doesn't stop. Because you are murderers. And I'll name every single one of you. Alright, just stop that. While I was going around the electorate before the election, I spoke to literally thousands of people, and one of the ladies I spoke to, Kathy, is a nurse who works at Murdoch, and told me that she had $2,000 worth of parking fines because what the councils are doing, or whoever's responsible for doing this, the politicians are responsible again. Incidentally, the politicians don't pay for parking. They don't pay for parking, so we shouldn't pay for parking. Simple as that. And what happened to this lady is that she accumulated $2,000 worth of fines because the people running that car park where the nurses are deliberately setting only 3-hour parking limits. It's so deliberate that it's just evil, really. And they don't care about the consequence it has on people. And it proves that they just want people's money. That's all they care about. They're setting 3-hour parking, and they also got their inspectors there to jump on the workers like vultures to fine them. So they're actually really deliberately, maliciously doing this to people, to fine them, knowing that they can't leave their job. Nurses can't leave their job. They give the doctors free parking apparently, but the other staff don't get free parking. So the nurses forced to endure 3-hour parking limits, knowing that they can't leave their job, so they know that then they're going to be able to fine them then, and they have been fining them. And this lady, one lady, she had $2,000 worth of fines just in the last couple of months because she can't leave her job and she's in the middle of a job in, you know, her nursing duties. She can't run out after 3 hours of parking and renew her parking, and they know that, and that's why they're deliberately doing it. They deliberately set it at 3 hours. They deliberately got they're fining people there like vultures, and they're deliberately doing it to raise revenue. So the people responsible for that should be prosecuted and jailed, because how corrupt is that? How corrupt is it to deliberately set 3-hour parking limits, have your people there, the fining people, inspectors there like vultures, and deliberately to cause economic harm to people, knowing that they can't leave their job because of the nature of their work. Even regardless of the nature of their work, it's unfair to do that to anybody, regardless of the type of work they do. So it's very evil. It's really evil what they're doing with the parking around Australia. The councils, you know, and also the politicians for allowing it to go on. Like I said, politicians don't pay for parking, so we shouldn't either. If everybody in Australia refuses to pay for parking and refuses to pay parking fines, then we can win. If everybody in Australia says
Class action
in the sense, well, we're just not going to pay it. You know, they can cancel everyone's licence but keep driving. What are they going to do? Put us all in jail? They can't do that. So I've made a stand. I'm not paying any more for any parking, and I'll continue to drive. I don't care, because you know, you get to the point in life where it's like, I'm not going to live like a slave. I want to fight for freedom and the rights of my people, the Australian people, and I'm not going to live like a slave. They don't pay for parking. They do what they want. They do what they want, and then they enforce their pathetic laws on everybody, on the civilian population, and it's evil. They're very bad leaders. They should be all jailed.
Somehow legislation got all screwed up.
Well, if politicians create laws and they have no moral basis or no benefit to society, if they're not positive for society, if they don't benefit society, if they don't help society, if they don't help the people, if they don't help the citizens, then your laws are useless. They've got no substance, and they're just enforcing a criminal type of society, you know, and expecting us to call them the honourable this, the honourable that. What a load of crap. You know, it's feudalism. It's feudalism. It's they're the masters, we're the serfs. I don't think so. No way. And in the end, they're going to end up in hell. They will be condemned for it. The only law that matters is the law of the Bible, the law of the New Testament. And it doesn't say in there, obey the law of the land. It doesn't say that. It says, obey Romans chapter 13, obey the government, for God put it there. Well, we're past that time anyway. We're past that time. We're coming into the time of the book of Revelation. That's what we're coming into. And Jesus didn't say that. That was Paul the Apostle who said that. You don't follow political laws when they're like Nazis. You don't follow laws where the politicians have created laws and they destroy the citizens' lives and they destroy their rights. You don't follow laws like that. Citizens should not follow laws. If politicians make laws and they're not good for society and they're not good for the people, they don't benefit the people and they don't help our society, we should not follow those laws. So I reject that. I think that's garbage. And a lot of Christians, so-called Christians, are just propping up these corrupt politicians time and time again. And they are just at fault. They're just as much to blame for the decades of suicide unaccounted for. They couldn't care less. Australian citizens kill themselves because of the politicians, the government. 105,000 homeless Australians across the country. That's up 17% last year. People being murdered in psychiatric facilities by the politicians and the psychiatrists. And you've got they're destroying the rights of teachers and the rights of parents. So why should we listen to anything they say? But you corrupt Christians, some of the Christians are prosperity teachers and preachers, just propping up these corrupt politicians all the time. Well, Jesus spoke against that sort of thing. He spoke against I'll give you a dozen teachings in the New Testament. I don't have the book with me at the moment, but I'll do it another day. You know, they say things that Jesus didn't say at all. That's all garbage. Hypocrites. That's what you call a hypocrite.
Yeah. Turn the tables upside down.
What else? This one? Or just turn off?
You sure?
Yeah.